You've seen the posts. Plastic is in your water, your dinner, and probably judging you from inside your vacuum cleaner. The message is always the same. Panic now, details later. But we're going to do the unthinkable on the internet. Slow down. The big question isn't, is plastic detectable? It's, at the dose people actually get, what's the measurable risk? Because present is not the same as problem. Let's start with what's true. Microplastics are basically everywhere. Detection tech has put them in tap and bottled water, in a bunch of foods, and floating through indoor and outdoor air. Some studies have even found particles in human blood and other tissues. That means exposure is real through swallowing and breathing. So, case closed? Nope. Risk is about hazard times exposure. Until you talk dose, you're just collecting scary nouns. Dose is where things get interesting. Older estimates suggested people ingest something like tens of thousands of particles per year, and that bottled water can add a lot more than tap. That's not nothing, but it's not a horror movie either. Then newer work started peaking at the smaller 110 micrometer range, exactly the size our lungs care about, and indoor air exposure numbers shot up. Think tens of thousands of particles per day just from indoor air in that size window, with homes and offices outpacing the great outdoors because we, live inside. Big lesson, what you can measure shapes what you think is happening. When methods got better for small particles, estimates climbed. That's not a plot twist, it's how science grows up. So if the numbers sound big, why haven't regulators run around with sirens? Because risk isn't count how many specks exist. It's what do those specks do inside an actual human at real-world doses? When global health folks looked specifically at drinking water, they concluded the current evidence didn't justify panic, while loudly asking for better research on small particles and toxicity. Translation, keep caring about safe water, absolutely keep studying plastics, but maybe worry about the usual suspects like microbes before you repipe your kitchen in artisanal glass. But didn't researchers find plastic in blood in the placenta? Yes, which proves some particles can get into the body and circulate. That's important. It tells us bioavailability is on the table. It does not, on its own, tell us harm. For that, you need dose response. As exposure rises, do bad things rise in a consistent, believable way in people? We're finally getting hints. A 2024 study looked at tiny plastic particles inside artery plaques from people having surgery and tracked health afterwards. Those with detectable particles in the plaque had a higher chance of serious heart problems later on. That is eyebrow-raising. It is also observational. Great for pointing the spotlight, not for declaring a verdict. Maybe the particles contribute. Maybe they tag along with some other risk. We need replication, standardized measurements, and studies that link changing exposure to changing biology in humans. Meanwhile, we already know places where risk can jump, certain workplaces. Factories handling synthetic fibers or plastic dust have documented respiratory issues that go way beyond household levels. That's the poster child for dose matters. 8 hours a day in a snow globe of polymer fibers is not the same exposure as walking past your yoga pants. Let's talk about the other elephant. Methods. Measuring microplastics, especially the tiny ones, is like trying to count glitter in a wind tunnel while someone is shaking a fleece blanket over your head. Different tools trade off size sensitivity, chemical identity, and practical sample volumes. Contamination is a constant enemy. Labs still don't agree on a single standard protocol. That means cross-study comparisons are messy, and early numbers were biased toward the bigger, easier-to-see stuff. As techniques push smaller, expect exposure estimates, especially for indoor air, to creep up. That's not proof of doom. It's proof we're finally looking where we couldn't before. What about lab toxicology showing inflammation, oxidative stress, and all kinds of drama? Those studies map possible ways plastic could cause trouble. But many use doses way above what a typical person gets. They're useful for building mechanisms and for flagging which sizes, shapes, or polymers might matter most. They're not automatic predictions for your living room. So where does that leave the myth? The myth says microplastics are an immediate catastrophic health threat for everyone at current background levels. Reality says exposure is real. and probably higher indoors than you think. Certain groups and settings face much higher exposures. Human studies are starting to connect the dots but haven't delivered a slam-dunk causal story for everyday life. And regulators are not calling a 5-alarm fire for drinking water right now. That's not nothing. It's nuanced, which, I get it, is less clickable than weird plastic piñatas. Now the part you actually control, without buying a $500 gadget that turns your sink into a spaceship. First, fix your air. A decent HEPA air purifier in the rooms you use, plus regular vacuuming with a real HEPA vac, cuts down particles of all kinds, smoke, pollen, and yes, microplastic fragments. Open a window when you can. Ventilation is the cheapest filter you've got. Second, pick tap-over bottles when your local water is good, and if you want belt and suspenders, use a reputable particulate filter on your tap. You'll likely cut plastic intake and definitely cut waste and cost. Third, tame the textile shed. Synthetics release fibers when you wear, wash, and dry them. Wash full loads, use cooler cycles, clean dryer lint, and consider a fiber-catching accessory or a drain filter. Your home isn't a factory, but textiles are a big indoor source. Fourth, heat food in glass or ceramic instead of in soft plastic containers. You don't have to throw out your entire kitchen, just swap the handful you use daily for hot stuff. Fifth, keep perspective. Put your energy where the payoff is proven. Clean indoor air, safe cooking, regular movement, sleep, vaccinations, and water that meets standards. Plastic worries shouldn't push those off your list. And here's the mindset upgrade. Expect the science to change. As we measure smaller particles and run better human studies, some risks may look bigger, some smaller, and some focused in places we didn't expect. That isn't flip-flopping, it's progress. If future trials show that reducing certain exposures improves real health markers, great. We'll update the playbook. If not, we'll say that too. Skepticism cuts both ways. So, panic or measurable risk with context. For most people, the curve is probably gentle. For certain jobs and medical scenarios, it's steeper. And the newest human data are a flashing yellow light telling us to pay attention, not slam the red button. Use common sense to trim exposure, push for better measurement and standards, and don't let a headline run your life. If this helped turn doom scrolling into thinking, subscribe to the Debunkers. Hit like so this reaches the next person marinating in scary screenshots, and drop a comment with the wildest "they found it in what" headline you want us to fact check next. We'll bring the skepticism, you bring the curiosity.